They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I served mine ice cold. After 2 years of meticulous planning, I destroyed my husband's life in front of everyone he worked with, everyone he respected, everyone he'd lied to. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start with revenge. It starts with a perfect marriage. Or at least, what I thought was perfect. 12 years of building a life together. 12 years of trust. 12 years of lies. This is the story of how I discovered my husband's betrayal and how I spent 2 years preparing the most calculated revenge anyone could imagine. And trust me, it was worth every single day of waiting. My name is Sarah, and for 12 years, I lived what looked like a fairy tale. I met David when I was 26, working as a marketing director for a tech company in Seattle. He was 28, a rising star in finance. Charming, ambitious, the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. Our connection was instant and intense. Within 6 months, we were engaged. Within a year, we were married in a beautiful ceremony overlooking Puget Sound. We built our dream life brick by brick. A stunning house in the suburbs with a view of the mountains, 2 golden retrievers named Max and Luna, annual trips to Europe, wine tastings in Napa, weekend hikes in the Cascades. David would bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. I'd pack his lunch with little notes that said, "I love you." We had inside jokes and shared playlists and plans for the future. Everyone called us relationship goals. Our friends would joke that we made them sick with how perfect we were together. Year 11 was our best year yet. Or so I thought. David got promoted to senior vice president at his firm. I launched a successful consulting business from home. We were financially secure, emotionally connected, planning to start trying for a baby the following year. Life felt complete, perfect, stable. Looking back now, I realize that's when I should have been paying attention. That's when the small changes started. David began working later. Not unusual for his new position, he explained. The promotion came with more responsibility, bigger clients, higher stakes. I understood. I'd been there myself. He'd come home at 9, sometimes 10 at night, exhausted but apologetic. He'd kiss my forehead, pour himself a scotch, and tell me about his stressful day. I'd massage his shoulders and remind him that the hard work would pay off. I was the supportive wife, the understanding partner, the complete fool. It was a Tuesday in October when my perfect world started to crack. David had asked me to grab his credit card from his wallet because he'd left it in his jacket pocket and needed the number for an online purchase. Simple request. I reached into the inner pocket of his Tom Ford blazer, the one he wore to important meetings, and my fingers brushed against something papery, a receipt, crumpled and forgotten. I almost didn't look at it, almost threw it away with the dry cleaning tags and parking stubs that accumulated in his pockets. But something made me unfold it, a hotel receipt, the Fairmont Olympic, room 847, one night, $273, dated 3 weeks ago, a Thursday night, the same Thursday night David had told me he was flying to San Francisco for a client meeting. The same Thursday night I'd texted him, "Good luck with the presentation," and he'd responded with a thumbs up emoji at 11 p.m., supposedly from his hotel room near the airport. My hands started shaking. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the San Francisco trip got canceled and he'd needed to stay downtown for an early meeting. Maybe it was a client entertainment expense. Maybe. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, that years of trust couldn't be undone by a single hotel receipt. But my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Because deep down, in that place where intuition lives, I already knew. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I went to our home office and opened our shared credit card account online. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the transactions, and there it was, a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice before. Monthly charges at the Fairmont Olympic, always on Thursday nights, always when David claimed to be traveling for work. 6 charges over the past 4 months. 6 nights I'd been home alone with the dogs, believing my husband was working hard for our future while he was actually 20 minutes away in a hotel room with someone else. I could have confronted him that night, could have thrown the receipt in his face when he walked through the door at 9:30, smelling like expensive cologne I hadn't bought him. Could have demanded the truth, screamed, cried, made him feel the pain that was ripping through my chest. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the part of me that still hoped I was wrong. Or maybe it was something deeper, something colder, an instinct that told me knowledge was power, and I needed more of it before I made my move. So when David came home that night, I kissed him hello like always, asked about his day like always, served the dinner I'd prepared like always, and watched him lie to my face like he'd apparently been doing for months. He told me about a difficult client, a presentation that went well, office politics that were exhausting him. Every word was smooth, practiced, believable. He'd had a lot of practice after all, and I smiled and nodded and played my role perfectly while my mind raced with questions. Who was she? How long had this really been going on? Did he love her? Did he still love me? Had he ever loved me at all? That night, after David fell asleep, I did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I went through his phone. My hands shook as I lifted it from his nightstand, as I carried it to the bathroom, as I entered his passcode. Our anniversary. How sickeningly ironic. I expected it to be locked, encrypted, protected. But David was arrogant, comfortable in his deception, sure that his trusting wife would never suspect, would never check, would never question. His text messages revealed nothing at first. Conversations with colleagues about work, messages to his brother about golf, texts to me filled with I love yous and miss yous and can't wait to see yous. All lies I now knew. But then I found a contact labeled JM with no phone number attached, just a username for a messaging app I didn't recognize. I downloaded the app, logged in with his credentials, and watched my marriage disintegrate before my eyes. Hundreds of messages, thousands maybe, going back almost 2 years. 2 years. Not 4 months like the hotel receipts suggested. 2 full years of my husband living a double life. The messages started professional, almost innocent, compliments about a presentation, thanks for help on a project. Then they shifted, late-night conversations, personal revelations. Slowly, steadily, a relationship developing in pixels and screens, while I slept beside him, oblivious. Then the messages became explicit. I won't detail them here. I don't need to. Anyone who's ever been betrayed knows the kind of words I'm talking about. The intimacy, the inside jokes, the future plans, the casual cruelty of 2 people bonding over the deception of a third. What made it worse was the ordinariness of it all. They talked about work and Netflix shows and what to order for lunch. They were comfortable together, familiar. This wasn't a meaningless fling or a moment of weakness. This was a whole relationship, a whole life I knew nothing about. J.M. Jessica Martinez. I found her name in one of the messages where he'd carelessly used it. A quick LinkedIn search confirmed my suspicions. Jessica Martinez, senior analyst at David's firm. 29 years old. Stanford MBA. Ambitious. Beautiful. Everything I'd once been before I'd invested my energy into being a good wife instead of climbing corporate ladders. She joined the firm 18 months ago. The timeline matched when the messages had started becoming personal. I stared at her LinkedIn photo for a long time. Professional smile, intelligent eyes, nothing particularly special, but nothing particularly wrong either. Just a woman who'd decided my husband was available, or maybe he'd decided she was worth risking everything for. I wondered if she knew about me. The messages suggested she did. There were references to your situation at home and when you're finally free and I hate that I have to share you. So she knew. She knew about me and chose him anyway. They were both guilty. They were both going to pay. I sat in the bathroom for hours that night, phone in hand, reading through 2 years of betrayal, while my husband slept peacefully in our bed. I could have woken him, could have confronted him right then with undeniable proof of his infidelity, could have demanded a divorce, taken half of everything, and moved on with my life. That's what most people would have done. That's what the old Sarah would have done. But something had shifted inside me as I read those messages. Something had gone cold and calculating and absolutely furious. I realized that divorcing David immediately would be too easy. He'd be embarrassed, sure. He'd lose half our assets, yes. But he'd also be free to be with Jessica openly. He'd get to play the victim, the man whose marriage didn't work out, who found new love with a younger woman. He'd rewrite the narrative at work, make himself the protagonist of a story about moving on and finding happiness. And I'd be the bitter ex-wife, the woman who couldn't let go, the one people pitied at dinner parties. No, that wasn't acceptable. If David wanted to destroy our marriage, destroy the 12 years I'd invested, destroy the future we'd planned, then I was going to make sure the destruction was complete. I was going to take my time. I was going to gather evidence. I was going to prepare. And when I was ready, I was going to burn his whole world down so thoroughly that there'd be nothing left but ashes. Revenge wouldn't be hot and impulsive. It would be ice cold and methodical. It would be perfect. The next morning, I woke up and made David breakfast like nothing had changed. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast with the expensive jam he liked. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye, told him to have a great day, reminded him we had dinner plans with friends that weekend. I was perfect, normal, unsuspecting. And from that moment on, I became the greatest actress in the world because David couldn't know. Not yet. Not until I was ready. The first few weeks were the hardest. Every time he touched me, I felt sick. Every time he said he loved me, I wanted to scream. Every time he came home late from work, I knew exactly where he'd been and what he'd been doing, and it took every ounce of self-control not to confront him. But I didn't. I swallowed the rage and the hurt and the humiliation. I kept it locked inside, frozen solid, waiting for the right moment to unleash it. I created a secret email account. I started documenting everything. Every hotel receipt I could find, every suspicious credit card charge, screenshots of thousands of text messages between David and Jessica. I downloaded them all, methodically, organizing them by date and category. I tracked his location using the Find My iPhone feature he didn't know I had access to. Every Thursday night, there he was. Not at the airport, not in San Francisco, but at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel downtown, barely 3 miles from our house. I hired a private investigator, an older woman named Patricia who came highly recommended and asked no questions. I told her I needed proof of infidelity for divorce proceedings. She was efficient and discreet. Within 2 weeks, she had photographs. David and Jessica walking into the hotel together, holding hands in the elevator, kissing in the parking garage. The photos were damning and detailed and exactly what I needed. Patricia also provided something else: Jessica's schedule, her home address, her daily routines, information I didn't know I'd need yet, but filed away carefully. But I didn't just need proof of the affair. I needed to understand the full scope of what David had done. So I started digging into our finances. Really digging, going beyond the surface-level joint accounts we shared. I discovered that David had opened a separate credit card I didn't know about. Charges at expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Jewelry purchases I'd never received. A weekend trip to Vancouver that had been charged as client entertainment, but coincided with the weekend Jessica had taken off from work, according to her social media. I found a separate savings account, $50,000 tucked away, money that should have been in our joint investment portfolio. When I investigated further, I realized he'd been slowly siphoning money from our shared accounts for over a year. Small amounts that wouldn't be noticed. $500 here, $1,000 there. Building his escape fund. Planning his future with her while I managed our household. Planned our meals. Loved him completely. The financial betrayal somehow hurt almost as much as the emotional one. I consulted with a divorce attorney. Not to file yet, but to understand my options. I chose a lawyer 3 towns over, somewhere David would never accidentally encounter me. Catherine Walsh was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She reviewed my evidence with an impressed nod. "This is incredibly thorough," she said. "You have an airtight case for infidelity. You'll get a favorable settlement." I asked her about the timeline. She said we could file immediately if I wanted. But I didn't want to file immediately. I wanted to wait. I wanted to gather more. Catherine looked at me carefully. "May I ask why you're delaying?" she said. "Most people want to move quickly once they have proof like this." I told her I needed to make sure I had everything, that I wanted to be absolutely certain before I made my move. She nodded slowly, understanding something I hadn't said out loud. "Just be careful," she warned. "Don't do anything that could jeopardize your case or put you in legal jeopardy." I promised I wouldn't, and I meant it. Everything I was planning was perfectly legal, just devastating. Months passed, 6, then 8, then 10. David had no idea I knew. I'd become so good at pretending that sometimes I almost forgot I was acting. We celebrated our 12th anniversary with dinner at our favorite restaurant. He gave me diamond earrings, I gave him a watch. We took photos that I posted on social media with captions about being blessed and grateful. Friends commented that we were couple goals, that they wished they had what we had. If only they knew. I watched David's relationship with Jessica evolve through his messages. They were getting more serious. He'd told her he was going to leave me soon, that he just needed to find the right time, that he wanted to make sure the divorce was as painless as possible. How considerate of him. Jessica was getting impatient. "When?" she kept asking. "When are you going to finally be free?" He kept making excuses. The timing wasn't right, work was too busy, he needed to prepare. But I knew what he was really doing. He was stalling, because leaving was hard and staying was easy, and as long as I didn't know, he could have both. Around month 14 of my secret knowledge, I started formulating the specific details of my revenge. It wasn't enough to just divorce him. It wasn't enough to take half of everything and walk away. I wanted him to feel the humiliation I'd felt. I wanted him to lose not just me, but his reputation, his standing, his carefully constructed image. I wanted everyone who'd ever respected him to know exactly what kind of man he really was. David's firm was old-fashioned in many ways, conservative. They valued integrity and family values and professional conduct. Affairs between employees, especially between senior vice presidents and their subordinates, were explicitly against company policy. Not illegal, but certainly fireable.
I knew this because I'd read through David's employee handbook one afternoon while he was at work. Fraternization that creates conflicts of interest or inappropriate power dynamics will result in immediate termination. Those were the exact words.
I decided on a timeline. David's firm held an annual gala every December, a black tie event at a luxury hotel where all the employees, their spouses, and the firm's biggest clients gathered for an evening of networking and celebration. It was the most important night of the year for the company. The night when promotions were announced, bonuses were revealed, partnerships were celebrated. David had been angling for a promotion to executive vice president. He'd talked about it for months. It was everything he'd worked for. The gala was in 8 weeks. 8 more weeks of pretending, 8 more weeks of collecting evidence, 8 more weeks of preparing for the moment when I would destroy everything he'd built. I marked the date on my calendar in red, December 14th, the night David's entire world would collapse. I felt no guilt about the timing, no remorse about what I was planning. He'd had 2 years to come clean, 2 years to end our marriage with honesty instead of lies. He'd made his choice. Now I was making mine.
The last 8 weeks were intense. I perfected every detail of my plan. I compiled all my evidence into a comprehensive digital presentation. Photos from the private investigator, screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, credit card statements, bank records showing the secret account, a complete timeline of the affair spanning 2 full years. I organized it all chronologically, creating a narrative that was undeniable and damning. I practiced my speech, what I would say when the moment came, how I would remain calm and controlled while David's world imploded. I rehearsed in front of the mirror when David was at work, making sure my voice stayed steady. My hands didn't shake. This had to be perfect. I'd waited too long for it to be anything less. I also met with Catherine Walsh one final time, reviewed every piece of evidence, made sure nothing I was planning would compromise my divorce case. She assured me it wouldn't. Everything was legal. Everything was factual. I was simply exposing the truth in a very public way.
The week before the gala was surreal. David was excited, energized by the possibility of his promotion. He bought a new tuxedo, got his hair cut, talked constantly about how this was going to be his year, how all the hard work was finally paying off. I listened and smiled and felt absolutely nothing except cold satisfaction. He had no idea what was coming, no clue that in 7 days, his career, his relationship, his entire life would be in ruins. Jessica had apparently been invited to the gala as well. Junior employees usually weren't included, but she'd been brought on to help with a major project, and David had pushed for her invitation. I knew this from their messages. He was excited to see her there, even though they'd have to maintain professional distance, even though he'd be there with me, his wife, playing the role of devoted husband while probably imagining a future where Jessica was on his arm instead. The delusion was almost impressive.
December 14th arrived. I woke up that morning with crystal clarity. No nervousness, no second guessing, just absolute certainty that what I was about to do was right and necessary and deserved. I went through my normal routine, made coffee, walked the dogs, went to the gym, got my hair and nails done at the salon, making sure I looked absolutely stunning for the evening ahead. This was my night too, after all. The night I took back control of my narrative. David came home early from work, excited and oblivious. He kissed me, told me he loved me, said he couldn't wait to show me off at the gala. I smiled and told him I couldn't wait either. And it was true. I genuinely couldn't wait. While he showered, I loaded the presentation onto a USB drive and slipped it into my clutch. Everything was ready. Everything was about to change. The gala was held at the Grand Hyatt in a massive ballroom decorated with thousands of white lights and winter flowers. It looked like a fairy tale, elegant, beautiful, the perfect setting for what I was about to do. David and I arrived together, his hand on my back, greeting colleagues and their spouses with practiced charm.
I saw Jessica across the room in a red dress, carefully not looking at us. She was good at pretending to. We all were. David introduced me to people I'd never met, senior partners, important clients. Everyone was polite and complimentary. I played my role perfectly. The supportive wife, the elegant partner, the woman who had no idea her husband was living a double life. Inside, my heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I knew what I had to do. I knew exactly when to do it. I just had to wait for the right moment.
Dinner was served. Speeches were made. The firm's CEO talked about the successful year, thanked everyone for their hard work, announced promotions and bonuses. David was named Executive Vice President. He stood up to applause, beaming with pride, and gave a short speech thanking his colleagues, his mentors, and his loving wife who'd supported him through everything. He looked directly at me when he said it. Everyone turned to smile at me. I smiled back, and inside I felt nothing but ice-cold purpose. After dinner, there was a presentation scheduled, the CEO's annual review of the company's achievements, projected on massive screens around the ballroom. I'd planned for this. I'd called the hotel events coordinator 2 weeks ago, introduced myself as David's wife, said I wanted to surprise him with a special anniversary tribute during the gala. She'd been delighted by the romantic gesture. She'd given me the technical details I needed, the AV team's contact information, the access codes, everything.
During a break in the presentations, I excused myself to use the restroom. Instead, I found the AV control booth at the back of the ballroom. The technician was young, probably a college student working the event for extra cash. I introduced myself with a warm smile, told him I'd coordinated a surprise video with his supervisor. He checked his notes, confirmed it was approved, and showed me how to connect my USB drive to the system. It was all remarkably easy. People are trusting when you look like you belong. I returned to our table. David was talking with colleagues, drinking scotch, celebrating his promotion. He looked so happy, so successful, so secure in his position and his future. I almost felt bad for a moment. Almost. Then I remembered 2 years of lies. 2 years of watching him kiss me goodbye in the morning and text her throughout the day. 2 years of him building an escape plan while I built a home. The moment of sympathy evaporated instantly. The CEO returned to the stage for closing remarks. This was it. In about 3 minutes, he'd finish his speech. The event would start winding down. People would begin leaving. I had to move now. I stood up, smoothing my dress. David looked at me questioningly. I leaned down and whispered that I had a surprise for him. His eyes lit up. He loves surprises. Loved them. Past tense, because after tonight, I doubt he'd ever love surprises again. I walked to the front of the room with confident steps, approached the CEO during a pause in his speech, apologized for the interruption, but explained that I'd prepared a special tribute to my husband on the night of his big promotion. Could I have just a moment to share it? The CEO was charmed. Of course, he said. What a thoughtful wife. He handed me the microphone. 400 people turned to look at me, including David, including Jessica, including everyone whose opinion mattered in David's professional world. I stood at the front of that ballroom, microphone in hand, and took a deep breath. This was it. 2 years of planning, 2 years of evidence gathering, 2 years of pretending and performing and waiting for this exact moment. I looked at David. He was smiling at me, proud and expectant, completely unaware of what was about to happen. I looked at Jessica. She looked slightly nervous, probably wondering if I somehow knew. She was about to find out.
I began to speak. My voice was clear and steady, amplified through the ballroom sound system. I said, "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah, David's wife of 12 years. I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate his promotion. It's been quite a journey for both of us. And tonight, I'd like to share that journey with all of you. The real journey, not the version David has told you, but the truth." I gestured to the AV booth. The technician, following his cues perfectly, loaded my presentation onto the screens. And there it was, the first slide, a photo of David and Jessica kissing in a hotel parking garage. The room went silent. David's face went white, and I smiled because this was just the beginning. I continued speaking, my voice calm and controlled despite the gasps starting to ripple through the crowd. What you're seeing is my husband, David, with his colleague, Jessica Martinez. This photo was taken 6 months ago, but their relationship started 2 years ago. 24 months of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. And tonight, I'm going to show you everything. The next slides began to auto-advance. Text messages, hotel receipts, bank statements, a comprehensive timeline of deceit projected in high definition for everyone to see. David stood up, knocking his chair backward. Jessica had gone pale. The CEO's expression shifted from confusion to horror to cold fury. And I stood there, microphone in hand, finally in control of my own story. "I've spent 2 years gathering this evidence," I said. 2 years watching my husband destroy our marriage while playing the role of devoted spouse. 2 years of being made a fool. But not anymore. Tonight, everyone knows the truth. Tonight, David's lies end. I set down the microphone, turned off the presentation, and walked out of that ballroom with my head held high. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices raised in shock and anger, David calling my name. But I didn't look back. I'd said everything I needed to say. I'd done everything I'd planned to do, and it felt absolutely perfect. This is where part 1 ends, but Sarah's story isn't over. The revenge has just begun. What happens after the public exposure? How does David react? What are the consequences for Jessica? And most importantly, was it all worth it? Find out in part 2, The Aftermath, coming soon to Timeless Whisper. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Was her revenge justified? Or did she go too far? Your perspective matters, and I read every comment. Until next time, remember, the truth always comes out eventually. The only question is how it happens and who controls the narrative when it does. This is Timeless Whisper, where real stories reveal the complex truth about relationships, betrayal, and the courage it takes to reclaim your power.